A lone ranger, gravely injured and surrounded by a pride of lions. Sounds like a death sentence, right? But what if I told you this isn't the beginning of a tragic tale, but of a miraculous bond between man and beast that defies the laws of nature? This is a story about survival, loyalty, and an incredible act of kindness that changed everything. You won't believe what happens when the wild decides to repay a life saved. Stick with me, because this is one story you'll never forget. Tembo's mornings start before the sun rises, the first light barely peeking over the horizon as he laces up his boots and checks his gear. His routine, both a ritual and a responsibility, is something he's perfected over the years. Each morning, he steps out into the African savanna, a place as vast as it is dangerous, where every step could lead to the discovery of poachers, endangered wildlife, or even an unexpected encounter with the animals he's sworn to protect. It's a life that requires both strength and subtlety, a balance between authority and respect. His job isn't just about law enforcement. It's about fostering a deep connection to the land and creatures that roam it. Tembo is part of something bigger than himself, a living thread woven into the fabric of the wild. When you speak to him, you notice how the savanna's pulse seems to match his own. His eyes, alert and calm, can spot a disturbance in the brush from miles away. He doesn't just walk, he absorbs every detail, every sound, every movement. A slight rustle in the grass could be the first sign of danger, or the first glimpse of a rare animal he's tracking for conservation efforts. It's a daily dance with nature, one that demands an instinctual understanding of its rhythm. But more than that, it's about trust. Trust in the animals he's sworn to protect, and trust in his ability to navigate their world. And Tembo, without a doubt, is a master of it. His patrols are rarely predictable. Some days, he'll be called to investigate reports of poaching in the area, sometimes only finding a single trap left behind, a lingering scent of danger. Other days, it's a more direct confrontation, facing off against poachers who have no regard for the sanctity of life. But Tembo approaches it all with the same calm determination, knowing that he's not just fighting for the animals. He's fighting for something larger, the balance of the entire ecosystem. Every day, he walks the line between being a protector and a witness, knowing that the delicate fabric of nature could unravel at any moment. Yet, as much as Tembo's life is rooted in the responsibilities of a ranger, it's equally defined by the intimate relationship he's formed with the land and its creatures. It's a kind of quiet reverence he carries for all living things, from the smallest insect to the most majestic lion. To him, every footprint, every claw mark in the dirt, is a testament to the wild's unspoken story. And in a world where so many are blind to that narrative, Tembo is the interpreter. He is the voice for those who cannot speak, standing firm in the face of danger to ensure their survival. By midday, Tembo's already deep into his patrol, the savanna stretching endlessly in every direction. But just as he begins to feel the familiar heat of the African sun, something catches his eye. There's a shadow moving in the distance. Could it be a poacher, a herd of elephants, or perhaps something more? And so, as always, Tembo prepares, his pulse quickening slightly, for the next chapter in his day, the next part of his journey that always seems to keep him on the edge of something incredible, yet unknown. As Tembo continued his patrol, he spotted something unusual. A broken branch, a disturbed patch of earth, small signs, but enough to make him stop and reassess. His instincts told him that something was wrong. Without hesitation, he moved deeper into the underbrush, knowing that danger was never far away. He had seen it all: poachers setting traps, the remnants of illegal hunting, the footprints of wild animals moving through the land. But what he didn't expect was to be the one ensnared. In a split second, a sharp, metal grip snapped shut around his leg. A poacher's trap. The pain was immediate and excruciating. Tembo gasped, his vision momentarily clouding with a haze of pain. He tried to move, to pull his leg free, but the iron jaws held him in a vice-like grip. His leg was caught tight, the blood already pooling beneath him, warm and sticky. He reached for his radio, But in the vast savanna, there was no signal. No help would come. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath ragged as he struggled against the trap, knowing he was alone. With every passing minute, the situation grew more dire. Tembo could feel the fading light of day creeping upon him, and with it, the awareness that he was now a sitting target. If the poachers didn't finish him off, the wild predators would. There was no denying it. He was vulnerable. He, the protector, was now the one in need of saving. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had been the one to defend the land, to fight for the animals. And yet here he was helpless, trapped, and at the mercy of the very forces he had spent his life defending against. But Tembo wasn't a man who panicked easily. Even now, in the face of such overwhelming danger, he drew on years of experience, focusing on his breath. He didn't have much time, but he couldn't afford to waste it. He searched the ground around him, looking for anything he could use to free himself. A sharp stick, a rock, anything. But the trap was old and rusted, the mechanism stubborn and unyielding. As the seconds ticked by, Tembo began to realize that escape might not be an option. His only chance was to survive until help arrived, or until he could somehow free himself. The sky above him began to darken, the savanna growing quieter as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The day was slipping away, and with it, Tembo's chance for immediate help. He was on his own now, but there was something else stirring in the air, a sense of unease, a feeling that he was being watched. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw them. Shadows moving, their outlines barely visible against the fading light. Could they be poachers returning to finish the job? Or was it something else entirely? Tembo's heart skipped a beat as he struggled to remain still, hoping that his fear wouldn't draw the attention of whatever was lurking nearby. As the last rays of sunlight flickered on the horizon, Tembo's mind raced. The shadows he saw creeping through the tall grass weren't the familiar figures of poachers. No, they were something much more formidable and far more unpredictable. A pride of lions had emerged from the shadows, their sleek bodies moving with an effortless grace that seemed to command the very earth beneath them. Tembo's breath caught in his throat. Fear gripped him as he lay there, vulnerable and helpless. The sound of their paws on the ground was like a warning drum, each step closer to him a reminder of his precarious position. Tembo knew the savanna well. He had encountered lions before, but this situation was different. He was immobile, injured, and the lions were no longer distant figures to be observed from afar. They were close, too close. He could feel the heat of their breath, see the gleam of their golden eyes narrowing as they watched him. Every instinct told him to brace for the worst, to prepare himself for a struggle that he couldn't win. Yet, strangely, the lions didn't attack. They circled him, their movements slow, deliberate. It was as if they were studying him, sizing him up, trying to make sense of his presence. In the wild, the predator is rarely merciful, but these lions were different. Their curiosity seemed to overpower their hunger. Tembo couldn't help but wonder, why weren't they attacking? The tension was palpable, the air thick with the kind of uncertainty that only wild animals can bring. He tried to remain still, not wanting to provoke them, but his heart was pounding in his chest. It was the kind of moment that felt frozen in time, where everything hung in the balance, and the only thing left to do was wait. It was then that something remarkable happened. One of the lions, the largest male, stepped forward. He was massive, his mane rippling like a golden crown in the dying light. He moved closer to Tembo, pausing just a few feet away, his gaze locked with the rangers. The air between them seemed charged with recognition, and Tembo's heart skipped a beat. This lion wasn't just another member of the pride. No, there was something deeply familiar about him. In that moment, Tembo realized this was the lion cub he had rescued all those years ago, the same cub he had nurtured after poachers had killed his mother. The realization hit Tembo with the force of a thunderclap, and a rush of emotions flooded him. As the lion stood over him, the pride watched in silence. They weren't attacking, they were waiting. And in that stillness, something profound began to unfold. This was no longer a predator-prey encounter. It was a reunion. The connection Tembo had forged with this lion, a bond that had been built on compassion and trust, was now coming full circle. And as the lion lowered his head slightly, as if in acknowledgement, Tembo understood that the wild had its own way of returning kindness. In this moment, the savannah was no longer just a dangerous place of survival. It was a place where acts of compassion had the power to ripple through time, creating connections that could defy even the most natural of instincts. Tembo's mind raced as the male lion, his old rescue, stood over him, the bond between them palpable in the heavy silence. The memories came flooding back, as vivid as if they were happening right there in the present. Years ago, he had been tracking poachers when he stumbled upon a small, trembling cub, no more than a few weeks old, huddled beside the lifeless body of its mother. The poachers had struck, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. Tembo couldn't leave the cub to fend for itself in the brutal wild, so he made the difficult decision to take the young lion in. It wasn't easy. He knew that he would have to eventually release the cub back into the wild, but in those few weeks, he had become its protector. He had fed the cub, kept it safe, and raised it for as long as he could. But Tembo wasn't naive. He knew the cub needed its natural environment, needed the wild to teach it what he could not. After a brief period of care, Tembo led the cub to a safe place in the savannah, watching from a distance as it disappeared into the tall grass, a symbol of hope for both the lion and himself. He never imagined that the cub, now a full-grown lion, would one day return to him in his hour of need. It was the kind of act that the wild rarely reciprocated, yet here it was playing out before his eyes in a way that defied logic. As he lay there, the weight of the lion's presence pressing down on him, Tembo felt a deep sense of gratitude mixed with awe. How often does one witness the return of such a powerful gesture of kindness? The lion had grown into its own, no longer the fragile creature he had once cared for, but a formidable leader of its pride. And yet, despite the vastness of the savannah and the distance between their worlds, it had remembered him. It had remembered the one who had shown it compassion. Tembo's chest tightened as he realized how little of the wild he truly understood. It was a place where actions spoke louder than words, and where survival sometimes depended not on strength alone, but on the connections that formed in the unlikeliest of moments. The pride surrounding him, their eyes flicking between the wounded ranger and the male lion, seemed to understand. They didn't act out of instinct to hunt or attack. They acted as if they knew that Tembo's presence was significant to the very fabric of their world. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was a meeting of souls. The lion had returned the favor, its massive form standing as a guardian to the man who had once been its savior. And in that moment, the savannah felt smaller, less a place of danger and more a place where actions, even the smallest ones, rippled across time and space. Tembo's thoughts were interrupted by the low growl of the male lion, as if urging him to hold on. The pride, sensing that something momentous was unfolding, seemed to move with even more intention. As the darkness deepened around them, Tembo understood that this was no coincidence. This was nature's way of showing that kindness, once given, could return in ways that even the most experienced ranger could not predict. He wasn't just witnessing the power of the wild. He was feeling it, experiencing it firsthand. And in his heart, he knew that he had just become part of something much larger than himself. The male lion's low growl reverberated through the air, and Tembo could feel the weight of its meaning. It wasn't a warning, it was a signal. The pride, sensing that their leader had made a decision, began to move in unison. Tembo could barely comprehend what was happening as the lions, some large, others still carrying the youthful energy of cubs, formed a protective circle around him. It was surreal. This wasn't the behavior he had come to expect from wild predators. They weren't circling him to strike, to test his strength, or to pounce. No, they were positioning themselves to shield him. The air, thick with tension moments before, now carried a sense of calm, as if the savannah itself had paused to witness the extraordinary act unfolding. One lion, a sleek female with sharp, intelligent eyes, lay beside Tembo, She was a silent sentinel, her body close enough to his to offer warmth, but far enough to allow for freedom of movement. Another lion, larger and more intimidating, took position on his other side, standing tall and vigilant. It was clear that the Pride had adopted a new role. They weren't just apex predators, they were now his guardians. The wild, which had often felt indifferent to human life, had shifted. They understood that Tembo wasn't an intruder. He wasn't a threat. In their eyes, he was something more, an ally, a friend, a protector of the savannah they all shared. Tembo, though still injured and struggling, couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The lions were giving him what he had long given them: protection. They weren't merely reacting out of instinct. They were responding to the bond that had been formed between them, a bond that transcended species. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about mutual respect. The wild could be brutal and unforgiving, but it also had its moments of beauty, moments where the lines between predator and prey blurred into something far more profound. In this moment, Tembo wasn't a human on the fringes of nature. He was part of it, and nature was offering its protection in return. As the night deepened, the savannah became eerily quiet, save for the soft rustling of grass and the distant call of nocturnal creatures. Tembo felt an overwhelming sense of peace settle over him, despite the bleeding wound in his leg and the darkness closing in. The Pride's watchful eyes were all he could see now, their golden orbs reflecting the moonlight, unwavering in their focus. There was no malice in their gaze, no fear, just a deep, primal understanding that they were protecting one of their own, an animal, in their own way, but an animal nonetheless. Tembo wasn't just a ranger anymore. He had become part of their world, just as they were now part of his. The hours dragged on, and despite the pain, Tembo began to drift into a fitful sleep, knowing he was safe for the moment. The lions never moved from their positions. Their loyalty was absolute, and even as he rested, Tembo couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening here. A lesson, an exchange, a truth about the deep connections between all creatures. This wasn't just about survival in the wild. It was about how acts of kindness, no matter how small, could resonate far beyond the initial moment. And in that, Tembo found something worth more than his own life. The proof that when you give something to the world, it has a way of giving back in the most unexpected and miraculous of ways. The night swallowed the savannah, and the air grew cold with the silence that only the African wilderness could produce. Yet, as the darkness stretched across the plains, it was quickly filled with an ominous sound, the shrill, eerie laugh of hyenas. Tembo, still lying helpless, could feel his heart race again as the unmistakable sound echoed across the savannah. Hyenas were scavengers, and they were drawn to the scent of blood. They would have no hesitation in attacking a vulnerable target. But what shook Tembo the most wasn't the approaching sound of the hyenas. It was the fact that he was completely at their mercy, and the lions were his only defense. The lions, sensing the new threat, began to stir. The air shifted, filled with an electric tension. Tembo, still immobilized by the trap, could only watch as the Pride reacted with precision, almost as if they had trained for this very moment. The hyenas were circling, their laughter growing louder, more confident as they neared. But the lions weren't backing down. They weren't retreating into the shadows. Instead, they moved as one, forming a defensive line between Tembo and the advancing hyenas. The sound of their growls resonated like a deep rumble, shaking the earth itself. It was a warning to the scavengers. This wasn't a meal worth pursuing. Tembo's breath caught in his throat. The lions were not only protecting him, they were protecting their territory. The hyenas, though numerous, had no place here. They were intruders in a world that the lions ruled. And as the hyenas crept closer, the lions rose together, their eyes blazing in the moonlight. The pack of hyenas hesitated, their laughter faltering as they encountered the raw, undiluted power of the Pride. For a moment, the savannah seemed to hold its breath. The tension was thick, as if time itself had stopped to witness the standoff. Tembo, his heart pounding in his chest, could only watch, helpless but oddly calm, knowing that the pride had claimed its role as his protectors. Then, without warning, the lions moved. In a fluid, synchronized motion, they charged the hyenas, their growls turning into roars that echoed through the night. The hyenas, taken aback by the sheer force of the lions, scattered in all directions, their confidence shattered. The lions weren't just defending Tembo. They were sending a message to the hyenas, to the entire savannah, that this land and its creatures were under the lions' protection. The hyenas, realizing they had bitten off more than they could chew, retreated into the darkness, their cackling silenced by the mighty roar of the lion pride. As the last of the hyenas disappeared into the night, Tembo lay there in awe, still processing the power of the moment. He had witnessed firsthand the loyalty and strength of the lions, but this had been something more, a show of unity and might that left no room for doubt. The lions had defended not just themselves, but him without hesitation. As the last echoes of the hyenas' retreat faded into the night, the pride settled back into their positions. Tembo could feel the weight of the moment in the air. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something deeper, something rooted in the very heart of the wild. This pride wasn't just protecting him. They were showing him a lesson in loyalty, in courage, and in the unspoken bonds that could unite even the most unlikely of allies. And in that silence, a new chapter of his journey had begun. As the night wore on, the savannah began to settle, the distant rustle of grasses and the soft calls of nocturnal creatures the only sounds in the air. Tembo lay there, his thoughts racing. Despite the immense pain from his injury, despite the lingering fear from the close encounter with the hyenas, something deep inside him began to shift. It wasn't just the physical relief of having survived the night. It was something far more profound. The lions, the pride, had not just protected him out of instinct or territorial duty. No, they had shown him something far more important: the power of reciprocity in the natural world. In that quiet moment, Tembo realized that their actions weren't just a coincidence. They had come for him, not out of necessity, but because they had remembered the bond he had shared with them years ago. He had always believed in the strength of the wild, the unrelenting cycle of life and death that governed it. But in this moment, lying there in the moonlit grass, Tembo understood that there was more to the wild than survival and strength. There was a deeper connection, a bond that could be forged through compassion and care, one that didn't rely on violence or dominance. Tembo had shown kindness to an orphan cub, and in return, the cub, now grown into a powerful lion, had come to his aid. It was a bond built on mutual respect and understanding, a bond that transcended species, time, and the harsh realities of the wild. The lions hadn't just been protecting him because they were predators. They had been protecting him because they understood the importance of their shared history. The realization hit Tembo like a wave. His entire life had been shaped by the belief that his connection to the wild was one of survival. But now, in the face of these magnificent creatures, he saw that true survival wasn't just about outlasting the dangers of the world. It was about building relationships, making sacrifices, and offering kindness without expectation. The lion's actions were a reminder of how small acts of compassion, even those made years ago, could ripple through time and come back to you when you needed it most. They had come to repay him for his kindness, to show him that the wild wasn't just a place of raw competition. It was also a place of deep, unspoken loyalty. Tembo's heart swelled with emotion as he lay there, the reality of the situation sinking in. The wild, in all its unforgiving beauty, had shown him that there was a kind of strength that didn't rely on dominance or brute force. Instead, it relied on trust, understanding, and the willingness to protect one another. As he looked at the lions surrounding him, their steady gazes never leaving him, he knew that this wasn't just a rescue. This was a moment of profound connection, one that would stay with him for the rest of his life. The bond between man and beast, formed through mutual respect and care, had been reaffirmed in the most unexpected way. And in that realization, Tembo found something greater than survival. He found a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the pride, but for the world they all shared. Despite the lingering pain in his leg, despite the blood still staining the ground beneath him, Tembo felt at peace. The lions had shown him something about the world that he had only ever believed in theory. They had proven that kindness, once given, could come back to you in ways you could never predict. They had reminded him that even in the most dangerous and isolated corners of the earth, the wild was not just a place of survival. It was a place where relationships were everything. And as the lions kept watch over him, Tembo's heart filled with the understanding that, just like the animals he protected, he too was a part of something much bigger than himself. Something beautiful, something that, once nurtured, could never truly be broken. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Tembo felt the weight of the night slowly lifting. The lions were still there, surrounding him in their protective circle, but the night's dangers had passed. It was a strange feeling, this mix of exhaustion and relief. The pain in his leg was sharp, a constant reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. Yet, there was a calmness to the moment, a sense that he had been watched over by forces larger than himself. He couldn't explain it, but he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude toward the lions. They had given him more than just protection. They had given him hope. Just as he was beginning to believe he might be able to rest, a distant sound broke through the stillness of the morning. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but Tembo's trained ears caught it. The sound of a vehicle. As the noise grew louder, the pride of lions, who had remained steadfast by his side all night, began to stir. They didn't move away from him, but their attention shifted. Tembo could see the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, a silent question hanging in the air. What was this new presence? A threat or a sign of salvation? He held his breath, knowing that in a moment, the outcome of the situation would be determined. The vehicle came into view, and as it drew closer, Tembo saw the familiar silhouette of his fellow ranger, Kofi, driving the jeep toward him. The lions, seemingly aware that their role in this chapter was complete, moved aside, still keeping a close watch but not interfering. Kofi slowed the vehicle, cautiously approaching the circle of lions and the injured ranger lying within. His eyes widened in disbelief as he took in the sight. A man, lying on the ground, surrounded by a pride of lions, but there was no aggression, no sign of danger. Just the quiet watchfulness of the animals who had decided to protect him. Kofi, who had seen his share of the wild's unpredictability, knew better than to question the scene before him. Tembo could hardly believe it himself as Kofi approached, his eyes scanning the lions warily. "Are you all right?" Kofi called, his voice steady but with an underlying concern. Tembo nodded weakly, still overwhelmed by the surreal nature of the night's events. The lions, in their quiet strength, had shown him more loyalty than he ever could have expected from creatures so often seen as fierce and untamable. With a gentle yet firm hand, Kofi helped lift Tembo into the jeep, his movements slow and careful to ensure that no sudden action would provoke the lions. They watched, their golden eyes locked on the two men, but they made no move to stop them. It was as if they understood. This was the moment when the bond between man and beast would take its final turn. As Kofi drove away, the lions lingered in the distance, their figures barely visible against the rising sun. Tembo, still in shock from the night's events, looked back at the pride. He didn't know when he would see them again, or what fate had in store for him. But he knew that this moment, this miracle of the wild, would be something he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The bond between him and the pride had been sealed, and as he rode away, he couldn't shake the feeling that their connection was something that would never be forgotten, not by them, and certainly not by him. The pride had given him more than just a second chance at life. They had reminded him of the power of kindness, the power of the wild, and the unexpected ways in which the world repays those who give back. The savannah stretched wide and endless, bathed in the soft, fading light of the evening. Tembo, now fully recovered from the injuries that had once left him helpless, stood at the edge of the ranger station, watching the horizon. In the distance, a small shape caught his eye, a lone lion. As he squinted, he recognized the silhouette of the same male lion that had once been an orphan cub, now a proud and powerful leader of the pride. The lion paused, looking back toward Tembo, as if aware of the man's gaze. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, and in that instant, something passed between them. A quiet acknowledgement, a shared memory that neither would ever forget. Tembo felt a deep sense of peace settle over him as he watched the lion slowly turn and rejoin the rest of the pride. They moved together in perfect harmony, a testament to the strength of their bond. The pride, now a symbol of resilience and loyalty, was crossing the savannah under a crimson sky, their every step a reminder of the deep connection that had been formed between them and the ranger who had once rescued them. He knew that the circle of life, so often thought to be a ruthless and unrelenting force, had revealed its more compassionate side in the wild. It wasn't just about survival. It was about giving, receiving, and remembering. It was about planting seeds of kindness that, when nurtured, would grow into something beautiful. Tembo's thoughts returned to that pivotal moment when the lions had surrounded him, their protective stance a reflection of the unspoken bond they shared. They had come to his aid, not as wild beasts, but as guardians who had once been saved. And now, standing here, watching them fade into the distance, Tembo realized that he, too, had been transformed. His experience with the lions had altered the way he saw the world, reminding him that the smallest acts of kindness could reverberate across time and space, creating a ripple effect that could change the course of lives. The wild was no longer just a place of danger and unpredictability. It was a place of profound connections, where even the fiercest of creatures could become heroes. As the pride moved further away, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the savannah in a golden hue. Tembo took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey. He had gone from a simple ranger protecting the land to a man who had experienced firsthand the incredible power of empathy, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between man and animal. The lions had given him more than he could have ever imagined. They had given him the courage to continue, the strength to push through the darkest moments, and, most importantly, the wisdom to know that the world was filled with miracles waiting to be recognized. In the stillness of the evening, Tembo whispered softly, almost as if speaking to the wind itself, "When you save a life, you plant a seed that one day might save yours." It was a truth he had learned through the wild, through the lions, and through the powerful, transformative experience that had changed him forever. As the last rays of light faded from the sky, Tembo turned and walked back to the station, carrying with him not only the story of survival, but the story of a deep and lasting connection that would remain with him always. The circle of gratitude had been completed, and he knew that no matter where his journey took him next, he would always carry the wild with him in his heart. What if the wild truly remembered every act of kindness? Tembo's story is proof that what we give to the world can come back to us in the most unexpected ways. If this story moved you, drop a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible animal rescue tales. You never know, your next act of kindness might change everything.